Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K,
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Monday, September 2nd. Thank you for watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. It is the Sick Podcast. And once again, I am Tony Marinaro. The Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. You all know by now that they are a leading full-service logistics provider. They serve all of North America. And believe me when I tell you that they are driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by Bittt at Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer perfect for the hot summer days. It was a chilly one today, mind you. With only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and ultra refreshing. Also brought to you in part by Playground. Step in the world-renowned poker experience at Playground, where free food and drinks at cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot. That's over $2.1 million weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service. Why play anywhere else? Located just minutes from downtown Montreal, right across the Mercier Bridge. Playground. And also brought to you in part by Accent Insurance Solutions. You would know by now that all insurance isn't created equal, and you know where to find the right solution for you. Accent Insurance. Accent doesn't just sell insurance. They shop it for you to find the right product, right on the money. Whatever your insurance needs are, home, automobile, or business, call them 514-363-3636. You can actually call them tomorrow morning. That's what you can do. Without further ado, I'll bring in, he's not a regular on Mondays, but I've already told him that he can expect to be a regular for this hockey season. I think we're going to expand our list of regulars in an ideal world. I don't know if we're going to be 6, 7, or 8, but I do know that Brian Wilde from Global TV Montreal will be one of them. He's gladly accepted the invitation, and the Montreal Canadiens fans are going to be treated to Brian Wilde, I would say, a couple of times a month at the very least on the Sick Podcast. Brian, how are you?
Thank you very much for that opportunity. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. God knows you've earned it, and you deserve it.
I appreciate that.
Okay. I think the last time I spoke to you, as a matter of fact, I'm quite convinced that the last time I spoke to you, I was still vacationing in Spain. And we said we were going to talk about a few things, and we probably got to some. We didn't get to others. But there's a lot that's gone on. Tomorrow will be 1 week since I spoke to Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes on my radio show, Le Forum, on BPM Sport. And I think Kent had a couple of things to say, and so we're not going to go over everything, but you and I have sent a few text messages back and forth to talk about what Kent said. And I think we're probably going to, we're going to break it down to 2 or 3 topics, one of which is Lane Hutson, which has been extremely interesting because everyone's had a take. I know Pierre Maguire had a take probably give or take a month and a half ago, 2 months ago on the Sick Podcast, where he said he'd love to see the Canadiens play more regularly or more often with 11 forwards and 7D. That can do a lot of things. That can give you less minutes for Matheson. That can give you some minutes for Lane Hutson. That can also make your 7th defenseman play instead of being, in the press box watching as a healthy scratch. That can also make you, much to the delight of Peter from Côte St. Luc, double shift your best players. There's a lot of things it can do. Craig Button says, listen, I've watched Lane Hutson quite a bit over the last 3-4 years. This guy, this guy's really good, and this guy's going to do really well. Kent Hughes said to me, look, I'm not going to try and hide him by making him a power play specialist. If he makes the team, it's because he can play a regular shift. It's because he can log minutes. And if that's not going to be the case, well, then he's going to start in Laval. We want Lane Hutson to be the best version of himself, however long it takes. Your thoughts on everything you just heard?
Well, yeah, well, I think if you, and we've been at this game a long, long time, and we get paid to read between the lines and understand what someone's really saying when they say what they say. And for me, that was Kent Hughes saying that unless Lane Hutson is really standing out, and it is very obvious that there are no issues with him defensively, then Lane Hutson is starting in Laval. And I had him on the second pair on the depth chart, and I thought he was going to be in the 3-4 role behind only Matheson Gooley. When I heard that clip, I thought, well, that's the guy that's preparing the fan base for the possibility that he gets some seasoning in Laval before he plays in Montreal. So he's going to, Lane, have to stand out. He's going to have to dominate. He's going to have to look like the last two games offensively and not have any issues defensively in preseason games. That's the way I read it.
So it's funny you say that, because I always expected Lane Hutson to start the season with the Canadiens this season. And so when Kent Hughes told me that last week on Tuesday on my radio show, the second he said it, I was like, holy geez, I'm not so sure he's going to start in Montreal anymore. However, can it be that he's saying that because, I mean, he can't guarantee he's going to start in Montreal either. I mean, there is a training camp, but there's going to be defensemen who are going to show up who are going to try and make the team, right? There's that as well that we have to consider.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, I think what it really said, like if you want to say that I've overstepped in the assessment there and he didn't go that far, you then at least have to accept that he is evaluating training camp with no assumptions. So Lane has to perform. I mean, you can't listen to what Kent Hughes said there and not hear at least that Lane Hutson has to perform in camp and has to really stand out.
If you're a member of the Hutson family or the Hutson group or the Hutson clan, call them whatever you want, you got to be really optimistic. You want to know why? Because Lane Hutson has always stood out.
Yeah, like as a player, I think that he's going to do that. You know, I think he's going to have an outstanding camp, and I think he's going to make the decision for the organization, one where it's a 100% to 0, that he has to start with the team because he is that good. Like those first two games he played last year, he was that good. He was exceptional. And I don't see any reason why he would come to camp and be anything less as exceptional and comfortable and has driving the play as he was in those last two games. I don't think they were a fluke, those games at the end of the NHL season. I don't think his game will drop off from that. I think he will earn his spot, and he will, according to Hughes, from what he said to you, he will earn it, and he will have to earn it.
He was very impressive in those two games, indeed. At the same time, we need to be fair and look at everything, right? And look, I think the kid's the real deal, okay? Having said that, let's be honest. Those two games meant nothing to the Montreal Canadiens. They had been eliminated from the playoffs. Pretty much every player on that team is saying 2 more games and then I get to go on vacation, and hopefully I don't get hurt because the missus is planned already. The all-inclusive to Turks and Caicos and Bahamas or the Maldives or wherever you want to name it. The others are like, you know what, I can't wait to play some golf with my buddies in a couple of days. So and he plays them saying, okay, these are my first 2 games of the National Hockey League. I want to impress a lot of people. This is where I want to play next year. And he approaches them like they're game 6 and game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So, we have to also say that meaningless games for the Montreal Canadiens, and the one player who was more motivated than any other player on that ice of both those teams was Hutson.
Absolutely. But let me push back on that. That yes, okay, from a Montreal point of view, they didn't seem like very important games for the organization except for Lane Hutson. But the pushback was the season. The entire season was on the line for his opponent, who were giving it 150% and only learned that they missed the playoffs during the shootout when Patrick Kane scored for the Wings and didn't even put his arms up. But when they played those last two games and Hutson was really competitive, his opponent, which is the most important thing, was highly motivated to excel and embarrass Lane Hutson so they could achieve their goals of making the postseason.
I think out of all the things that I heard, and everyone's opinion, at the end of the day, the beauty is that we don't know, and not even Lane Hutson knows. Kent Hughes doesn't know. Lane Hutson doesn't know. Marty St. Louis doesn't know how Lane Hutson's going to do. I think the one that makes a lot of sense is Pierre Maguire talking about Leo Carlson and load management. I mean, Leo Carlson last year played 55 games. Lane Hutson, we have to remember, is not a big guy, whether he's listed at 5'10" or he's really 5'9", whatever it is. We know that he's probably about $165 or whatever it is, or he's not very big. And traditionally, rookies that have a lesser than average built or size, at one point they break down, especially if they are players who at the college level or at the junior level didn't play more than 50 games. You cannot play 82 games at the National Hockey League as an 18-year-old if you're not very big, if you're not very strong, if you're not used to that kind of workload. And load management really worked out for Leo Carlson. I think he played something like 18 minutes and 5 seconds on average per game. He would play the power play. I think in 55 games, he picked up just shy of 30 points, I think 9 of which were on the power play. I think load management will make a lot of sense for Lane Hutson. Don't get me wrong. I want to see him with the Canadiens, and I want to see him play all 82 games. And if he could play all 82 games without breaking down and his body could resist, I think he would be in contention for the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year. But I think logic says if he's going to be in Montreal, load management's the way to go. What do you think?
Well, and I think a lot of the success that Lane Hutson will have will depend on Martin St. Louis. Because for me, here's a really intelligent coach that really gets inside the lines on what his players are and are not able to do, and put them in positions where they're able to succeed and excel. Like, for example, I expect that when the Canadiens are down by 1, Lane Hutson will see some shifts, quite a lot of them. But when they're up by 1, I don't expect to see him in the last 10 minutes of the game. So he's going to get a best opportunity to succeed because his head coach is so intelligent on nurturing him and nurturing the game. So that's one thing. I'd like to also kind of mention the fact I heard a long radio station segment on Lane Hutson. They were talking about his ability to excel overall. But what I really felt that they didn't mention at all in terms of just saying, okay, here's a college kid who has a small schedule. They didn't add on that he actually played at the World Juniors and wasn't like a guy who only played 13, 15 minutes. He was the top American in ice time for that team. He played 26 minutes per game. He was the go-to guy when they succeeded at the U20s. So I think that Lane Hutson can handle a little bit more than a lot of people think he can handle. Sure, the college schedule is not 82 games, but there have been a lot of collegians, like take Brady Tkachuk, that didn't need to be babied through their first NHL season. And so again, we're having that same argument, and it's entirely about his height and his weight. And when I was watching him last season, he was really learning how to not be vulnerable to his height and his weight. He was learning how to box out and not relying on strength all the time. And he was learning how to get it done with a giant amount of minutes on a best-on-best World Junior tournament. So I'm very optimistic what he can do. I'm very optimistic that he's already going to be a 1-2 pairing defenseman offensively and a 5-6 pairing defensively. So if you consider he's 1-2 on the O side and 5-6 on the D side, what's it come down to? It comes down to usage by his head coach to get the most out of him and make sure he's got the best opportunities to succeed. And I have a ton of confidence in Martin St. Louis that he can make the best Lane Hutson come out, if not the first season, in the following season.
Those who are a little bit concerned or maybe even rather pessimistic vis-a-vis Hudson's first season, possibly in the National Hockey League, will bring up the lack of size, will bring up the fact that they're not sure if he's going to be able to defend at the NHL level versus those big bodies, whether he's going to be able to win a lot of battles, whether he's going to be able to clear the front of the net. But I think what they're not looking at is, even though those could be some legitimate concerns, there are ways that a lot of those situations can be avoided, or at the very least minimized. Let me explain. He's defending. This guy has an ability to anticipate plays better than anybody. This guy has an ability to break up plays. He has an ability to get to loose pucks. And when the puck is thrown in behind him and he goes after it, instead of being vulnerable that a lot of people think he's going to get hit, he knows how to get out of tight spaces. He knows where the puck's going to go. He knows what play to make. He knows what pass to make. He's got moves and he moves his shoulders, and I've been saying over the last week, like, everything I'm hearing about Lane Hutson, we heard about Cole Caulfield, yet they're different players and they play different positions. I get that. So they're going to be in different positions on the ice. But when you're a small player and you've been a small player all your life, you know how to avoid getting, like, how many times did Cole Caulfield get hit?
Yeah.
I don't know how many times Cole Caulfield got hit. Not a lot. I mean, Juraj Slafkovsky in his first season in the National Hockey League got hit a lot more than Cole Caulfield did.
Yeah, not getting hit is about how clever you are on the ice and how much vision you have and seeing plays develop, and how great your peripheral vision is as well. And one more point to make about Hutson and how well he might do, the head coach is smart enough to put him with the right partner. Like, that guy, his entire career is going to play with David Savard types. And he will probably, if everything goes right, will play with David Savard to start the season. So not anytime, but they'll mitigate how many times he is the one in front of the net trying to cross-check his opposition who's trying to screen the goalie. And ways as a partnership to ensure that Savard is getting the more physical role and Hutson is getting the less physical role. And remember, at the end of the day, Lane Hutson's desire and his assessment will be, they didn't actually play much in the defensive zone.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's
I mean, when he's doing it like he's doing it, you're like when I watched him in Boston, I mean, for the most part, I mean, he didn't have to defend. Right. No. And then best on best for America, the U20s. I mean, he didn't have to defend. Now he's going to have to defend. I'm not suggesting he's not going to have to defend at the NHL level, but even in the last 2 games, I was kind of shocked at the NHL level against the Red Wings. It was like, wow, he's not, like, I'm not getting to assess how good he can be physically, because it's not happening. He's not, he's not in his own zone struggling.
Yeah, and he's got the perfect coach. And once again, although he's not a forward and he's a defenseman, this team will play to his strengths. This team knows how to play one-way hockey right now, and it's with the puck, and it's on offense. And it's not to say that they don't know how to play defense, but obviously it's not their point of contention. It's not where their emphasis is. It's clearly going to change over the next couple of years. Once they become more competitive, they're going to have to introduce a lot more of those schemes and defensive strategies to make themselves a more difficult team to beat. Now, you said something a couple of minutes ago, as which everyone I think would agree with, that you're going to see a lot more of Lane Hutson when they're down a goal, because they're going to need a goal, rather than they're up a goal and they're going to have to defend the lead. So at the same time, I see him playing with David Savard the way he did last year for those 2 games. I see him somewhat having a regular shift. I can see them cutting down the bench a little bit so that once again, he's not on the ice in the final 2 minutes. But at the same time, if they give him a regular shift like everyone else, to see what he can do and how he can react and how he can respond. And even if he makes a mistake, they're going to live with it. It wouldn't surprise me by this group because once again, as Kent Hughes said, we're not going to put him on and we're not going to put him and hide him. If we're going to put him, it's because we can put him and he can take it. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't hide him.
Yeah, that comment, it's, you try really hard to not read too much into it. That's what I'm trying not to do, is read too much into that comment, because that comment for me, I can't stop thinking that it means that Lane Hutson really, really has to prove himself. He has to stand out. That's the way. They've got guys waiting in the wings. Do they want to put Jaden Struble back down? Justin Barron can't go down, or they'll lose him on the waiver wire. Do they want to have Arber Xhekaj in there? Hell yeah, because they don't want to get pushed around. They need his fists and his physicality. So Logan Mailloux has earned his stripes. He had an outstanding season in the American Hockey League. Are they going to tell him to spend another one down there? Lane has to stand out, because I think organizationally, they, as an organization, I think feel guys need to go through the steps, prove themselves at the levels to earn their keep. I think that's the way they view the world. So it could be interesting. It's going to be going to be fascinating on the blue line. There are, once again, 9 guys for 6 spots.
Brian, we're whatever it is, 5-6 weeks away from the beginning of the regular season, but I'm already going to be prepared to make a statement, which is Matheson, if everyone's healthy, if everyone is healthy, Matheson will play every game. David Savard will play every game. Mind you, I think at one point he will be dealt. Caden Gooley will play every game. And then Xhekaj, Struble, Barron, and Hutson, they're rotating. There's going to be a different guy out all the time. I don't think Mailloux is going to start with the big club.
Interesting.
Mailloux missed a lot of hockey at the junior level because of reasons that we know, with the suspension and everything like that in the shortened season. He had that 1 year last year in the American Hockey League, or wasn't all a complete year. And we know that he was very good. And we know that Francis Bouillon, who works in player development for the Montreal Canadiens, said that of all the players that were at the American Hockey League level, the one who was the most ready to make the jump was Logan Mailloux. It wouldn't shock me that he starts the season in Montreal. But as one scout once told me, Tony, I never saw a player get burned by too much time at the American Hockey League level. But I've seen players get burned. Defenseman. But I've seen players get burned by not enough time. And so what I think is going to happen is David Savard, who's a right-handed defenseman, Logan Mailloux, who's a right-handed defenseman. Savard at one point will be dealt, whether it's at trade deadline, whether it's a week before or 2 weeks before. And then once Savard will have moved on, it's at that time that I think Logan Mailloux will get called up. That's the way I see it, but who knows?
What if, here's a question for you. What if everybody shines? Because the Savard trade is more like a trading, like a deadline deal, I would say, right?
Correct.
But what if everybody shines at camp? Could Jaden Struble be dealt?
He can be. You see, the thing, I'll tell you why.
Because the guys that are going to get dealt are the 5-6s, right?
Perfect. Correct.
Well, you're sure they're 5-6s.
And that's what we've seen so far, right? They traded Harris and they traded Kovacevic, who are
they were 5-6s.
Who are, not only were they depth defensemen, I think the reason at the end that they were traded is because neither had an X factor. And it's true that Kovacevic's size was a big asset. And it's true that Jordan Harris's IQ was a big asset. But I think neither were so great that they were huge X factors. Like Kovacevic may be big, but he's not overly mean and he's not overly strong and he's not overly physical. So that attribute, I don't think is an X factor. Jordan Harris is very smart and he's got a very good IQ, but it's not in the top of NHL defensemen. So I don't think that's an X factor either. But you see, Xhekaj has an X factor. Xhekaj is one of the top 5 toughest players in the National Hockey League on everyone's list. and he's a deterrent. When the wires touch, look out, and you're going to think twice before getting in front of the net because he's going to cross-check you in the teeth, and you're going to swallow in your molar. But so, yeah, usually they'll trade the 5/6s, and I think though, so Struble,
and the X factors.
So Struble, does Struble have an X factor? Not yet.
Yeah. So because for me, like if you're a GM, if you're Kent Hughes, all you want to do is not get burnt. That's it. I don't want to get burnt. So like when you trade Harris away, you say, okay, I'm not going to get burnt. You say you trade Kovacevic, you know, at his age, that's it. There's, no higher, you're not going to get burnt. And then, so how can you get burnt? Well, the X factor Jack guy means, yeah, you can get burnt. And then the rest, you basically say, what's their ceiling? And Maillout's ceiling is second pair. And Hutson's ceiling is second pair. So you're not trading those guys. And so what's Struble's ceiling?
Yeah, I don't know what is. I would say it's a third pairing defenseman. Yeah, there's no doubt. Right? It's too bad in a way with the rules being what they are that they had to trade Kovacevic. I don't think anyone's crying his departure, with all due respect. But at the same time, in a cap league, and when you want to have 7, he would have been perfect because his ceiling, I think, has been reached. Being out of the lineup would not have hurt his progress or his development. And he doesn't make a lot of money. And in a cap world, he's a perfect 7 to have. As I've said to Craig Button on numerous occasions, right? When you're playing a card game of Rummy 101 and at 100 you're in, and at 101 you bust and you lose the game, if you've already paid about 88, 89, or 90 points, you'd love to keep a Kovacevic in your hand because it's like having a 2 or a 3, right? It doesn't cost you a lot of money on the cap that you could take a hit and you could still be okay. It's too bad. By the way, I love that whole analogy that I just did. But anyway, I'm going to use it a couple more times. It's too bad you have to lose them. But once again, that is a consequence of being as deep as they are on defense and having as many defensemen as they are. So anyway.
And remember, we haven't mentioned Reinbacher.
Well, he's not going to start in Montreal, is he?
No. No. That's not the point I was making. I was making the point about depth-wise over time. The following season, you've got to make space for yet another guy.
Correct. So right now, as of September 2nd, after listening to what Kent Hughes had to say on my show, you're leaning towards Hutson starting in Laval?
No, I'm 50-50.
Okay.
Only because of that comment. Before it, I was 100-0.
I got it.
I thought it was fait accompli that he was going to play 100% in Montreal. Just that kind of we're not going to put him in the NHL just to put him in the NHL style comment meant that he had to really have a great camp and prove himself.
I think
so. I'm still going to put him. I'm still going to put him in the NHL, Tony. Yeah. I'm going to put him as one of the 6. So it's Matheson, Gooley for sure. It's Hutson and Savard as the second pair, and I think Barron has to be on the third pair because they lost Arturi Lehkonen for him, who was still a hell of an NHL player. They got to keep playing Barron in the NHL because he won't go through the waiver wire at his age.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think I'm.
And then Arbor Jack guy for the X factor that he brings, right? Yeah. So that's your 6. So that's Struble not on the team.
Well, I think they're going to go with Lane Hutson on the team, and I think once again 4, 5, 6, and 7 are going to rotate, and I think there's going to be a little bit of a load management for Lane Hutson. That's the way I think it's going to go down. All right, moving right along.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
One of the things I said to Kent Hughes was, I said, Kent, you haven't made the playoffs 3 years in a row, and for me, it's no big deal. You've let everyone know that you're rebuilding, and not making the playoffs for me is a consequence of the plan, and I'm totally on board for the plan. No problem. But I said, having said all that, if you miss the playoffs this season, in your opinion, is it a failure this time? Yes or no? And he said, no, it's not a failure. Our goal was to improve the offense so that we can be in the mix down the stretch in the month of March. And we think we're on course. If we make it, great. If we don't make it, it's not a failure. The goal, the objective, is to be in the mix. Thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what is really getting me right now is that when you look at Vegas and a lot of experts around the league, they've got the Habs for around 70, 75 points again. And I'll tell you what, if that's the number that they're at in April, that is very, very disappointing, because this is an organization, like, there are three phases of development, right? That there's the draft, then there's the arrival, and then there's the maturity. They are basically at the all have arrived stage that are game changers, except for Demidov. Like, Reinbacher's going to be solid, but he's not a game changer. He's not Cale Makar. He's not changing the result of the game. He's adding to good results, but he's not changing him. Demidov is the only game breaker to come. So if they're sitting with essentially the lineup that's have already arrived and are now approaching the maturing phase, if you're still at 75% 75 points when all of your guys have arrived except one, there's a big problem. That means you don't have the goods.
Okay, so enlighten me here. The Montreal Canadiens came off of a 76-point season. Once again, I think they were among the top in the National Hockey League for man games lost. It's about 3 years in a row now. Kirby Dach was lost period 4 of the season. Dvorak was lost long-term. Newhook was lost long-term. Sean Monahan was dealt mid-season. The Canadiens had a 3-goalie system. Cole Caulfield wasn't producing at the clip he produced the year before. Josh Anderson had one of the worst seasons of his NHL career, if not the worst. The Canadiens were one of the youngest teams, if not the youngest team in the entire National Hockey League. The power play was the second worst or the worst in the entire National Hockey League. This year, everyone starts with a clean slate. Kirby Dach starts healthy. The team starts healthy. They've added Patrick Laine. They're at a 2-goalie system. Their power play will be better with Laine and the addition of possibly Lane Hutson. You would expect Caulfield to be better from a shooting and scoring perspective because the shoulder is now 100% rehabilitated. Juraj Slafkovsky will enter season number 3 in the National Hockey League, where he really started to come into his own in year 2. How the hell can the odds makers have the Canadiens finish with 1 point less than they did a year ago after I just said everything I told you? Give me the over.
That's it. And if they're not like way over where the odds are being set, there's a big problem, right? Like, I think they're going to be 15 points over that. So like then, because that's the progression. The progression is 70, 75. Now they've all arrived. Now you're at 90. Now they're all here. Now they mature. Now you're at 100 in points, right?
Yeah.
It's arrival, then maturity. So who's got to arrive and mature? Demidov. Who still has to mature? Slafkovsky is still maturing, right? His game's still improving by leaps and bounds. And then you have a lot of guys that are coming back and being healthy, and you're not sure where they are in terms of Kirby Dach. But you last year had a team that had 76 points that essentially was a one-line hockey team. 53 goals in the second half of the season, which would be 106 prorated, the first 100-goal line since 1993, which Hughes said to you he's going to keep intact. Now you have a second line that is improving on the Kirby Dach, what he brings, the hopeful recovery of Patrick Laine, the health of Alex Newhook, and then next year you have a little bit of discussion, who does Demidov replace in that mix, which is pretty clearly the top 6 right now. So if this team isn't like finished at 236, if this team isn't at 286, which is exactly what Kent Hughes wanted to do with the maturation of Juraj Slafkovsky, the maturation of that line with his maturation, the return of Kirby Dach, the return of Alex Newhook, the arrival of Patrick Laine. If they're still at 236, those odds makers are going to be right. But not only are they going to be wrong in terms of what that second line brings, they're going to be wrong in terms of what now those players that were asked to be second line are loving the matchups of now being third line and four line, where they're saying, hey, I don't have to face the other team's best center anymore or second base center. I'm facing their weaker players. And now I'm Josh Anderson, and I'm loving life. It seems good to me again. I'm Brendan Gallagher, and I'm loving life. It seems good to me again. And so I see, just because down the line, the matchups are a lot better, they add another 10 goals there. They were the worst team on second line, third line, and fourth line in the entire NHL last year, until only the very last week when the San Jose Sharks benched like four guys they were completely frustrated with, like Hoffman, and their numbers went lower than the Habs. They go from 32 to somewhere around 10 to 15. Everything changes, and that's what I'm predicting will happen.
And you know, those injuries that I talked to you about, we didn't even get into Caden Gooley missing the 12 games due to injury. David Savard missing 22 games due to injury. You talked about Alex Newhook. He missed 27 games due to injury. At one point, Newhook was hurt. Dvorak was hurt. Sean Monahan was dealt. And Kirby Dach was hurt all at the same time. And Jake Evans went from a fourth-line centerman to being a second-line centerman and playing about 19 minutes per game. It's unbelievable. And the Canadiens finished with 76 points. And you're going to tell me that the odds makers think the Canadiens are going to finish with 75? I'm going to tell you this. The Canadiens, I feel very safe in saying this. Once again, I can be wrong. And they could be really unlucky and hit 1,000 goalposts and get injury trouble again. Knock on wood. But I'll say this. I'm prepared to say that the Montreal Canadiens are going to at the very least, have a 10-point improvement.
This needs to be a 90-point season to me, because you've got most of the components that you're expecting will give you greatness, right? So you got to hit 90 this year, and then you move from 90 to 110 on the continued maturation of Lane Hutson, the continued maturation of Juraj Slafkowski, the arrival of Demidov. Those are the reasons that you push another 20 points. The maturing players, but they don't have anybody to, unless, they draft super high. And we haven't mentioned Michael Hage, but I don't think he is going to be somebody that moves the meter a ton either. He'll be in a third line role, very strong, don't get me wrong, but, not somebody like Reinbacher that moves the needle. So they need to be 90 and then rely on the maturation of these players that are already on the team and the arrival of Demidov to be upper echelon. Because if they're lower echelon with these guys, then they're not going to be ever upper echelon. But I think they are. I think the 53 goals that first line had in the second half of last year, I don't think that was a fluke. And when they get 106, they're top 5 in the league, that line. Top 5 in the league. If
Michael Hage is one day a third line centerman for the for the Montreal Canadiens, that's going to be when they're probably going to be ready to win the Stanley Cup. I look at it this way, okay? October, November, December, January, February, March. That's 6 months. 1 win more per month. That's 12. April's half a month. You pick up 1 point more. That's 13. I can see the Canadiens going from 76 to 89. You said they got to shoot for 90 points. I think that's the way you do the math. 1 win per month and a tie in April more because it's half a month. And that's right. The math.
And then from there, you're just going on. And then the control elements must remain the control elements. I mean, Mountain Bell can't turn into 885. The control elements have to be the same. And they have to be, obviously, we're relying on all of these assessments in terms of, Doc finally stays healthy. Newhook finally stays healthy. Line A is the player that feels comfortable in a locker room instead of uncomfortable.
I think I found our next show. And so we're not going to give an answer right now, but I want you to think about this one for a while, okay? Think about this one until we talk again next time. I said to Kent Hughes, I said, Kent, if your team makes the playoffs, we can take a look at 10, 11, 12, 13 things that have to happen for you to make the playoffs. I said, but I'm going to narrow it down to a top 3 in no particular order. I said to him, okay? Your power play has to be in the top 15 of the league. I said to him, that's number 1. Number 2, you have to be healthy, something you haven't been in the last 3 years. And number 3, your goalies have to have their best NHL seasons of their careers. And I said to Kent Hughes, I want you to give me something where you can answer that same question, but neither of those can be your answer. So I'm going to ask you, Brian Wilde, the same thing. I want you to think about this, and I'm going to give you a couple of days. I might even give you a week, but you and I will reconnect, and that's going to be probably one of the next thing we're going to talk about, all right? Give me the one thing that has to happen for the Canadiens to make the playoffs, and you cannot choose the goalies having their best year of their careers, the power play being in the top 15, and the Canadiens being healthy, which they haven't been in 3 years. I want you to come up with one thing. You don't have to give me the
But
answer
not, but
now.
not right now.
Not right
Okay.
now.
All
Okay,
right.
that gives
I
you
got
probably
some- I
about a
got
week
some
to think
ideas.
about
I got
it.
some
That gives you
ideas.
probably about a week to think about it, all right?
I'll come prepared.
Thanks for doing this, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Always my pleasure.
There you have it. Brian Wilde from Global TV Montreal. You can check out his Call of the Wild throughout the entire hockey season, once again on Global TV Montreal. Special thanks to Energy Transportation Group, as well as Tibi, as well as Playground, and as well as Accent Insurance Solutions. And special thanks to Agnello and Sammy Cavallaro at Master Control. Thanks, everyone, for watching the Sick Podcast on all social media channels, especially on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. For Sammy and Agnello, I'm Marinaro. Sick Podcast.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.